So our first speaker for today's conference is Martin Smedjeback, who is a full-time animal rights activist and speaker. He is currently running the crowd-funded project A Safe Year for the Animals, and he is also the chairperson of the Safe Movement Sweden. In his work, Martin holds presentation, facilitates workshops, does open rescues of animals. He spent time in prison for his civil disobedience actions. He campaigns for animal rights and takes photos and shoots videos. Martin's presentation will cover safe activism, filming inside with civil disobedience, and undercover filming, writing and study visits, all at and about slaughterhouses. Please welcome Martin Smedjeback.
Hello, everyone. So I'm happy to be here with you today. And I want to start my presentation with this picture. The awful screaming of the pigs from Manchester, England still haunts me today. I was invited in 2016 by Manchester Pig Save to hold a few presentations. And there I attended a whole day vigil. And one of the activists led me close to this giant slaughterhouse we were at. From that moment onwards, I have focused a lot of my activism around slaughterhouses because I really want to try my best to stop these horrendous places of killing. Before I begin, I want to say that there will be some disturbing pictures, not surprisingly perhaps, but there won't be very many, and I've made them black and white to be a little bit less disturbing. And I won't show any videos at all during my presentation, but I will give you links afterwards where you can watch our work that we have been doing. I will structure this talk around three questions: why, how, and what. Number one, why should the animal rights movement work to abolish slaughterhouses? And number two, how can we reach the goal to abolish slaughterhouses? And number three, what methods should we use to accomplish this goal? So firstly, let's talk about why should the animal rights movement work to abolish slaughterhouses? In my assessment, when it comes to animal rights movement in Sweden, we have focused a lot about the living conditions of animals in the farms. And I think this is super important, and I support this. But I think we have been lacking in activism on slaughterhouses, on the killing. And the taking of life is reason enough really to be active against this. But also I would argue the experience of being inside of a slaughterhouse and being killed is possibly the worst thing anyone can imagine. Here is a cow smelling the blood of another cow that was killed just before her. Here is a pig being forced into a gas chamber at one of the slaughterhouses. In Sweden, gasting of pigs is the most common way to make them, to render them unconscious. And the Professor Per Jensen says this about this experience. The physiological effect of the gas is rather agonizing. It triggers a reflex that makes the animal hyperventilate and causes a strong feeling of suffocation. I also believe it's strategic to focus on killing because the deadly violence has a lot of potential to affect people. I don't have the research, but my gut feeling tells me that it affects people more. It doesn't affect people as much to see a pig on a concrete floor compared to seeing them being pushed into a gas chamber or their throats slit up. So number two, how can we reach the goal to abolish slaughterhouses? I believe we can never win over slaughterhouses as companies. Instead, we have to win the battle of the minds, get the public over to our side, and also work on the institutions and political decisions and lawmaking. And to have a chance to abolish the slaughterhouses and other parts of the animal exploitation, we really need to have the public on our side and to bring this issue into the public debate. So how can we do this? Well, there are 3 ways at least: exposing, disturbing, and connecting. We need to expose the slaughterhouses, the violence, so that people will see it, like here at the Slaughterhouse Inspection. We need to disturb the killing factories and show that some people are willing to take a risk to do this, like here at the blockade, and we'll talk about this later. And we need to connect. We need to make people connect with the individual animals and make more and more people to have the experience. We also need to show that there is an alternative that is as nutritionally and delicious as animal products, so that they see that they have a choice. My ultimate goal in life is to strive for less violence and less pain for both people and animals. So that's why I choose non-violence for my methods. And I also think it's a strategic better choice because it gets us to animal liberation faster. So number 3, what method should we use to accomplish this goal? And this is where my main presentation will focus on. What are our tools in the toolbox to abolish the slaughterhouses? Well, I've been looking at 6 different methods of which I have personal experience of almost all of them. And I think all of them has their potential. I will discuss these. I will briefly mention what they're about, and I will also mention pros and cons, that is advantages and disadvantages of each method. And while I go through these methods, perhaps you want to think about which of them can be a fit for you. So let me start with Save-activism. The animal save movement, as many of you probably know, is consisting of hundreds of groups around the world, standing regularly at slaughterhouses, often with signs to show passers-by what it's about, where the slaughter. And we also document the transports coming in, as you can see here. And we often post this online to make people, to have the possibility for them to make the connection to the animals. I would say the pros with this method is that it happens regularly. So in that way, it's a continued pressure on slaughterhouses. It's a good start, I would argue, for activists, if you're a newcomer in the activist scene. And it's also relatively low risk to do this kind of activism. Well, are there any downsides, any cons? Well, it could be too much repetition. People feel like, oh, I've really already seen that picture and so on. So that's a challenge to us to constantly be creative and come up with new ways to use this method. Number 2, study visits. My experience from this came in 2017 when I was at Kalmar Animal Save at one of the first vigil we had at one of the biggest slaughterhouses in Sweden. And the trucks, they avoided us activists by driving another way to get into the slaughterhouse. And Katrin, the main organizer of the group, she got so annoyed, so she called up the CEO and said, "What do you have to hide?" And that CEO said, "Oh, we don't have anything to hide." And he actually invited us to come inside at the study visit to watch it, which we did later. We were 3 of us. At both of these, and I also been at another study visit also as a Save-activist actually, at the Slaughterhouse outside of Uppsala. At both of these study visits, they said we were not allowed to film or photograph. I have to admit, tempted to do it secretly, but I came to the realization that it would hurt our credibility too much if we would have done that, if it came out. And people might ask, oh, so what's the point then? Well, I think still it's highly valuable to do this, because you will see this in the eyes of an animal rights activist. And the pros with this method is that you can say that I know what it's like to be inside a slaughterhouse. I have been there myself. I think that's powerful. And you can speak about it and you can write about it like I did here at the blog post I wrote. I wrote both after this, both visits. And I also got interviewed by a local newspaper about the experience. The cons is, of course, that you don't get any footage. And also, of course, it can cause you emotional pain to see these horrible places. Third is to document outside of a slaughterhouse without a vigil or any other activity. You can go by yourself or take a friend and sit outside of a slaughterhouse. You can photograph from the outside, especially if you have a camera with a good zoom. You can get very valuable footage, video and photographs. For instance, when they take off the animals from the transports. I got this photo from a container of these poor individuals right outside the fence of a slaughterhouse on the back. The pros with this method is that if the slaughterhouse is not aware of your presence, it's easier to get footage of their activities. The only disadvantage I could think of is that it might be boring if not so much happens. My fourth method recommendation is filming inside with civil disobedience. And in my presentation, the pros and cons of civil disobedience within the animal rights movement at the IARC in 2016, I talked about the many advantages of using civil disobedience, so I won't go much into that. But there has been very little documentation inside of slaughterhouses in Sweden. And some of us wanted to do something about that, so we started a new group called Kycklinginspektionen, the chicken inspection. So we did our last action in April last year, where we went into this chicken slaughterhouse, the biggest one in Sweden, with daily 200,000 chickens killed. And we got right into the heart of the slaughterhouse. We live streamed from the beginning of the action until the end when they captured us. And we also filmed with high resolution cameras. A few months after that first action, we decided to form Slaughterhouses, the slaughterhouse inspection, and went to a slaughterhouse with the pigs and cows. And also at that place, we got to the very important places of the slaughterhouse. Some of my activist friends came and saw this when they were actually killing or shooting the cows with a bolt gun before the throats were slit up. We did this with civil disobedience, as I said, so we were willing to take responsibility, so we didn't try to run away or anything when the police came and got us. One of my worries was that we wouldn't get out with our material after action. And one of the workers took my GoPro with my material and they handed it over to the police. But luckily, the police gave it back to me after a few weeks, I think it was, and the material was intact, so that was good. And This is from a trial after the chicken inspection. We were 4 people getting charged and convicted of illegal trespass, and we got a fine for 150 euros each, and nothing more than that. So what are the positive things about this kind of method? Well, you can get very strong, powerful material. So I think getting when they are shot with a bolt gun is the most, maybe the most powerful you can get. And I think that can affect a lot of people to become vegans or activists. One of the cons could be that you could face violence from the slaughterhouse workers. We didn't face that much at all, actually, but it can happen. And of course, there is a big risk that you get charged and convicted. Now, as I said, 150 euros was the, we got fined for, but it could be a lot more, possibly. It depends from case to case and also from country to country, what the law says, of course. We will have an upcoming trial, we think, from this last action with the Slaughterhouse Inspection. In that, the slaughterhouse wants 3,000 euros for damages. Even though we didn't break anything, they still want that. So we'll see what the courts will decide. I talked at the IARC also how to best harness the potential of non-violence for animals. And there I pointed out that even though the cons are real, the disadvantages are real, it can be actually turned to our advantage, at least for the animals, that in our suffering and what we are faced with, that can create momentum for the animals, and that's called political jiu-jitsu. Number 5 is undercover filming, and this can be done in 2 ways. The first one is if you get a contact with a worker inside, and that actually happened a few years ago with Animal Save Skövde in the Save movement. And this guy had recently started working at Slaughterhouse, and he was appalled what he said. He wanted to do something about it, so he agreed to film secretly inside for us, and he gave us the material, and we edited it and published it. The first publication was actually that we showed it on the wall, as you can see here, on the very same slaughterhouse that where he filmed the material, and then we published it online. The advantage of having a person in there already is that, well, you don't have to search for anyone. You only have to convince the person to help you out. Of course, the cons can be that this person is not very reliable, possibly. You don't know that person often. But there is also another way, and that is to have an animal rights activist to take a job at a slaughterhouse, or possibly yourself to do that. This way is showed by this woman, Norwegian woman, Norun Hagen, who worked for years undercover in the Norwegian animal industry and has done tremendous work to start a discussion on factory farming in Norway. And they did a documentary on her work called Secrets of the Pig Industry. That is very powerful, sent on both the Norwegian, Swedish and Danish television, and some more, I think. She gave me a bit of advice on what to think about when you want to use this method. It's good if you take a person to have this job that is not a known face as an animal rights activist from before, so that person won't be exposed. it's best to start work at the farm, because then you can have that experience and to put it on your CV when you apply for a slaughterhouse job that is often a bit more tricky to get. She says it's good to apply for a job as a cleaner inside of a slaughterhouse, because then you get access to almost the whole slaughterhouse often. And try to get a job as a substitute or work in off seasons, because maybe they're not so picky in their hire then. Especially chicken slaughterhouses, you don't need to have special skills to get that kind of work. So what are the pros in this kind of method? Well, it's that you can get really unique, powerful material. For instance, the horrible killing of piglets. And not only film these scenes, you can also pick up what the farmers and the slaughterhouse workers talk about it, what they say. For instance, in the documentary, you can say, after killing a baby piglet, oh, that went well, now I'm going to look at the next one. You can see how like every day is deadly violence is. What about the cons? Well, it's a really big commitment. Sometimes you work for months or years in this, and you also have to keep this secret from many people. Open with your actual thoughts on animals and animal rights while doing this kind of work. And obviously it can be emotionally draining, and there is a risk of psychological problems after having seen this violence for a long time. Number 6, blockades. So my group Empty Cages did 2017 in Linköping. We were about 30 people, and some of us were driven away by the police, but no one got charged. We did another one a few months after that in Kristianstad, the biggest pig slaughterhouse. There a few got charged and fined, got a small fine. There we had a Facebook live streaming, and it reached 457,000 views. What's the positive things about this? Well, this confrontative method can really spark a discussion that is well needed about the killing, like we see with the huge numbers that saw our life. And it's also a very good feeling of being many together doing this powerful method. There is a risk that you actually get hit by one of the trucks, and that almost happened in Kristianstad actually at this one blockades, and the driver drove this car to the right here. He actually got convicted for reckless driving because of this driving at the blockade. So these were the different methods that I wanted to mention, and I can recommend. I hope you can find your way, because it is so important that we continue to work against the slaughterhouses, that we do our best to stop this killing. And I do believe it is possible to stop this violence if we peacefully step up our resistance as much as we can. And thank you for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to talk more about this with you.
So thank you, Martin. Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation. We will start the Q&A part now. Just a little note, we do have some technical issues, so the Q&A stream afterwards is not currently working, but we're working on it, and we can still ask some questions right now. So I will read out the questions for you, Martin, and then you can answer them. First one is, can you elaborate on the emotional pain these investigations can cause and how you're distancing yourself from it, or how are you coping with it?
Yeah, I would say it's so individual. It's difficult to say anything in particular because we are so different in our emotional and psychological makeup. For me, for instance, I don't get affected that much. I mean, I had nightmares before and after these kind of actions where we went inside, but it doesn't stay with me. But I know for some it stays weeks and months after. I think if you had problems before that, if you feel unstable or in other ways not psychologically fit, maybe then you should really think if this is something you want to do right now, because then I think it can affect more. But if you feel like psychologically healthy, otherwise I think it's a better chance of getting through it.
Okay. And we have another question. Thank you, Martin. And it says, could you elaborate what you and Slaughterhouse Inspection measure to assess the efficacy of your actions?
That's a good question.
Can you measure it? Or
I mean, I think it's always good to try to measure your effect, but it's also so hard, I believe. Of course, you can see like how long has this, I mean, how many have you reached by this? That's always a measure, and that says something. And I think it says important how well you are able to spread the message. Obviously, it's much more difficult to say how does it affect people. And I think like the slaughterhouse inspections we did, it was viewed by quite many, but it didn't get public media. I mean, I think then it would be spreading a lot more if we got it on the news or something.
yes,
We didn't. I think now we have this material, and also in the future that can be affecting people, since we have, as I mentioned, so very few very little material from slaughterhouses. So I think possibly for years that can be used to affect people.
Okay. All right. So thank you. We are, like I said, the stream isn't working yet, but we hope we can get it done for the next presentation. So thank you for answering these questions, Martin. We will end the Q&A session now, and thank you so much for your presentation and for doing this and being at the conference again digitally. So
my pleasure, and I will hang around here at the conference, so you will be able to
so if people have additional questions, can they contact you? Is that okay? Okay, perfect. So you heard it.
and also I want to hear your experience. As I said, it can differ very much from country to country. It would be interesting to hear.
Okay.
Your matter.
I just saw that there was one additional question, if you would like to answer that real quick. So you mentioned that you needed to go to jail before due to your activism. Can you say how it affected your life? Or
Sure. It was rather short sentences, and I had been in prison before for my peace activism, so I was kind of used to it. But we're quite lenient when it comes to punishments in Sweden, so it wasn't a long time, and it was a low security prison, so you have rather a relatively large freedom even inside the prison of talking to others, not being put in your cell and so on. And I could go on. I mean, I was reading, I was writing quite extensively in the prison as well. Other than that, it hasn't affected me much. Maybe to put more emphasis on activism. So I've been a full-time activist for a long time, and that prison sentence doesn't affect that. I would continue working with that. Actually, now I am more flexible also being a full-time activist. That's part of my activism.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing this, and thank you for everything you do and for all your actions, and
Thank you.
educating people about what's happening. That's so important.